بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى. Let me get one. أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. I praise Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I thank Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to send countless blessings and salutations on the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. So inshallah Ta'ala, we're going to continue in our study of the book Al-Maqasid for the great Imam Abu Zakaria Yahya ibn Sharaf al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. And inshallah ta'ala, we are going in a structured way in studying the matters of our religion. So the next book after this will be in this series will be all fiqh. The previous books that we read, and among those books we read were encompassing epistle, Ar-Risala to Jamia for Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al-Habashi, which dealt with Aqidah, the issues from At-Tahara to Al-Hajj, and the obligations of the heart and the sins of the limbs. Then we read in Sulam at-Tawfiq, which was a little bit more detailed, but the same content, the same format. First, the section of Aqidah, then an issue of apostasy, then At-Tahara and Salah and Zakat, Saum, Hajj, some indication to dealings and marriage, and then the obligations and sins of the heart and the sins of the body, and then concluded with a section on At-Tawbah. Then we moved to the Ark of Salvation, Safinat al-Najah, which in the beginning talks about the essential foundations of Islam, the integrals of Islam. Then it went into the chapters of Al-Fiqh and in summary. So now we're in Al-Maqasid, which has the same format, that it goes up to an issue of belief, then At-Tahara, Salah, Zakat, Saum, Hajj, and then a final chapter on Sufism. Then after these books, we're going to go into books now that are more detailed in Al-Fiqh, and books that are more detailed in Al-Aqidah. and books that are more detailed in at-tasawwuf. So these introductory books give us kind of a map to our studies. Uh, so you can, in a way, say that these uh, beginning books are books that are based upon the hadith of Jibril, alayhi salam, which was related by different narrations by Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih and Imam Muslim in his Sahih, which divides the religion into three basic sciences, which is al-Islam, which indicates al-fiqh, al-Iman, which indicates al-Aqidah, and al-Ihsan, which indicates at-Tasawwuf. So now in this book, we're on page, what page you said? 19?
14.
Page 14, which is going to talk about at-Tahara, so purification. And purification comes before the prayer because purification is a condition for the validity of prayer. So there is no prayer without purification. And the main cause of purification is water. So the author, the translator of this text, is going to fill in some sections that are not mentioned in the original book in order to fill it out. So we're going to read through those sections, briefly discuss them, and then in the next coming books, we'll go in more detail. What I want you to do during this reading of this book is to concentrate heavily on understanding the text, not so much details. A very key important point in studying Islam in general, but al-fiqh in specific, you have to concentrate in stages because there's a lot of details. And if you don't master foundational matters, the details are going to confuse you. And we've seen that oftentimes that a person makes many mistakes because they didn't master the details. They didn't master the foundational points. And then they were studying details and they got lost in the detail and forgot the original point. So we're going to heavily concentrate on the foundational points, making sure we understand them, which means that you're going to hear me a lot not answer certain questions. When I see questions that don't have anything to do with the foundational material, I'm going to put them off for later, right? We don't want a session of what ifs. What if this, what if that, what if this, what if that, what if this, that could happen all day long. Let's get the foundational material mastered, and then the what ifs will be answered easily. And Allah knows best, inshallah. So let us begin, inshallah, with Al-Fatiha to the soul of Sayyiduna al-Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, Al-Fatiha. Mm.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, Purification 2.1. Reliance of the traveler. Purification, tahara, is in sacred law, means lifting a state of ritual impurity, hadath, as defined at 2.8, removing filth, najasa, at 2.3, or matters similar to these, such as a purificatory bath, or ghusl, that is merely sunnah, or renewing ablution, wudu, where there has been no intervening ritual impurity.
So this is the definition of Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, for at-tahara. So tahara is purification. And when we talk about religiously purification, we're talking about lifting the state of ritual impurity, which is called al-hadath. And we mentioned in our previous text that al-hadath or ritual impurity is of two types: major ritual impurity, al-hadath al-akbar, and minor ritual impurity, al-hadath al-asghar. Al-hadath al-akbar is lifted by performing the purgatory bath, al-ghusl. And we mentioned al-ghusl before, and we'll mention it again, how it's performed. And lifting the state of minor ritual impurity is done by ablution or al-wudu. Also, tahara includes izalatul najasa, removing najasa. And we said that najasa should be removed from one's clothing, one's body, one's place of prayer, or what one carries in the prayer. And then Imam Nawawi, to include other aspects, he mentioned matters that are similar to these, like taking a ghusl that is sunnah. For instance, like the ghusl for al-jumu'ah, right? When one is not in a state of major ritual impurity, but one performs a ghusl for the jumu'ah, which is recommended, right? So this is tahara, but it is similar to lifting the state of major ritual impurity, but there is no major ritual impurity. Or one makes al wudu to renew one's wudu, which is a recommended matter, but you're not actually lifting the state of al hadath. Or now, let's stop there. We don't need the extra details. We'll come back to it. So get this definition, right? In another way, Imam Nawawi said, a tahara is lifting the state of ritual impurity, removing filth, or what has the meaning of it or the form of it. Mm, go ahead.
Water. Purification is only valid with plain water, not
So
with
Imam Nawawi said that the water by which you can purify with has to be ma'un mutlaq, which is purifying water. What is meant by that? It is water that is pure in itself and it's not conditioned by anything, meaning it comes from its natural source, whether from the earth or from the sky. So any water that comes from the sky or naturally comes from the earth is considered uh, plain pure water. Mm.
Not with 1. Water previously used for purification, per reliance of the traveler, unless it has now been added together until it amounts to 216 liters in Arabic kulatain or more.
So this is called used water. And used water is water that has been used to lift the state of ritual purity, right? So the traces of that water is not valid to use for a second time. Mhm.
Number 2, water changed. Per reliance of the traveler, change meaning, per the translator, throughout the rulings below, in taste, color, or odor, so much that it is no longer termed water. Through admixture, through admixture, per reliance of the traveler, with something pure, tahir. Per the translator, meaning not affected with filth, like flour or saffron, which could have been avoided.
So whenever you have water, right, and that water is mixed with a pure material substance, like flour, for instance, that the water could have been protected from, that water changes to the extent that is no longer termed water, that is no longer valid for purification. So, say if you had dish detergent next to some water, and that dish detergent got in the water and it changed the content of the water so that you no longer would call that water, right? That water is not valid for purification. Even though the material is mixed is pure, but it changed to the extent that it's no longer termed water. Like if I had a tea bag and it was in water, and once that mix, it's called what? Tea, no longer called water, right? Such is not valid for purification. Mm.
Number 3, or impure water, meaning less than 216 liters of water into which filth, najasa, as defined at 2.3, has fallen. Per reliance of the traveler, less than 216 liters becomes impure by mere contact with filth, whether the water changes or not, unless filth falls into it, whose amount before it falls in is so slight that it is discernible by eyesight, meaning an average look, not a negligent glance, nor yet a minute inspection.
Mhm.
As for 216 liters, per the translator, or more, it does not become impure by mere contact with filth, but only becomes so by changing, per the translator, in taste, color, or smell because of it, even when this change is only slight. If such change disappears by itself, such as through standing at length or by water being added to it, even if the added water is used or impure, then the water is again purifying.
So here, the third part is the water that is najis. So when we talk about water in the Shafi'i school, as we mentioned before in our previous books, that we're going to talk about amounts. It's very essential. And that amount is called kullatan, or 2 coolers, which is roughly approximately around 216 liters of water. That's considered a large amount of water. So whenever you have water that is less than 216 liters, right, that water is considered a little amount of water. Whenever it's 216 liters or more, then that is considered a large amount of water. Now, when we talk about a najis, filthy thing like blood or urine or feces or vomit, etc., and other things, they're called najis, right? They are filthy matters religiously, and we'll have a separate discussion just on najasat, those impure things Islamically. Impure does not necessarily mean dirty. So dirt in and of itself is not impure. In fact, dirt in itself is pure. So because something has dirt on it doesn't make it najis, right? There are certain matters that are najis, and the author is going to mention some of them coming. So that najis, filthy thing, if it comes in contact with a little amount of water, which is less than 216 liters, then that water, just by mere contact with that najis, filthy thing, becomes najis, becomes filthy. And hence, it cannot be used for purification. It cannot be used to lift the state of ritual impurity or to remove an najasa. If, even if there is no change in the water, so change when it's the najis thing that comes in contact with a little amount of water has no relevance. Even if it doesn't change, just mere contact spoils the water. As for 216 liters and more, kulatain or more, then it only becomes impure if the najis thing changes its color, taste, or smell, right? Those characteristics. And we said change relates to its color, taste, or smell. If that najis thing affects the water in that extent, then that water is najis and you cannot use it.
Types
Right.
of filth, najasa.
So now the author something is missing.
That's what I have.
Okay. Let me go. Okay, let's add another point. There is water, but it doesn't relate to us, so maybe that's why the author left it out. Usually, there is a water that is considered water that is heated by the sun, right? In a metallic container, in a hot climate like the desert climate. Such water is disliked to use, right? It's called ma'al mushammas. That water is disliked. So remember we talked about the different categories of the sacred law: obligatory, recommended, permissible, disliked, and unlawful. So the najis is unlawful to use, right? This sun heated water is disliked to use, right? Uh, but that's a third. So just water heated by the sun in a metallic container in a hot environment, like the desert, hot climate. So not here. This is not a hot climate like in America. Maybe in Phoenix, Arizona, somewhere like that, those type of places. But like where we live, no. Mm, go ahead.
The addition: water that is heated by the sun in a metallic container in a hot climate. This water is disliked to
There's
use.
another word for hot climate, like desert area. I forget what they call it, arid climate or something like that.
I don't know.
But the desert area. Mm,
Types of filth.
yes.
Types of filth. Najasa. Filth, najasa, means number one, blood. Number two, per reliance of the traveler, pus. Number three, vomit. Number
So
four,
here we're talking about an najasa itself, those things which are filthy Islamically, right? So he's mentioned them. Okay, go ahead. Blood.
number one, blood. Number two, per reliance of the traveler, pus. Number three, vomit. Number four, liquid intoxicants. Per the translator, whether liquor or other products containing ethyl or methyl alcohol, since these two are produced by wine fermentation, as opposed to other chemically distinct types of alcohol that are not produced by wine fermentation and hence not filth.
And with alcohol, you're going to have difference of opinion among the scholars of which types. As I always tell those who study with us, out of religious caution, safety, avoid all types of alcohol unless there was a religious necessity that one would work with. And even in that, one should be cautious. But so, not just drinking alcohol, but other alcohols, avoid them, especially in your perfumes or your lotions and all of that. Though there are some scholars who said this is not what is intended by that. But look at that as a dispensation. For yourself, be strict. For others, allow them to have dispensations when needed, or even opinions that are not that strong, but they do exist. So don't censor someone who does it. You may say to them, it is religiously more precautious that you don't do that with in relation to these perfumes and things that have alcohol in them. So you try to avoid them, right? And be more on the safe side. Mm.
Number five, anything that exits from the front or rear private parts other than sperm or female arousal fluid. Per the
which
translator,
is which is pure, but if it exits, one needs to make al-ghusl, even though it is not najis, it's not filthy. Mm.
per the
Because it is from the origin of the human beings, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ennobled the human being. Mm.
Per the translator, the latter meaning that normally released in climax.
Mm.
Number six, any animate life that dies without being Islamically slaughtered other than aquatic life. Per the translator, excluding amphibians which are filth if unslaughtered, locusts, or human beings.
Mhm.
Number seven,
So the meta is the unslaughtered uh, dead animal. It is najis. Mm.
number seven, and dogs, swine, or their offspring. A body part separated from a living being is considered, per the translator, in respect to being filth or not, like the unslaughtered dead of that animal, except for
Mm.
the hair of those animals that Muslims may eat after slaughtering. Per the
Mm.
translator, i.e., such hair, fur, wool, feathers, and the like are pure.
Hmm.
Wine. Wine becomes pure if it turns to vinegar by itself, per the translator, i.e., if nothing of visible size has been added to make it turn. So do hides of unslaughtered dead animals if tanned. Per the purpose of the translator, tanning means removing from a hide all excess blood, fat, hair, and so on by using an acrid substance, even if impure. Per the translator, commercial leather, even when originally impure because taken from an unslaughtered animal, is washed with pure water at every stage of its tanning, so is pure. The hides of dogs or swine cannot be made pure by tanning, per the
Because
translator.
the dog and the pig are in themselves najis, in and of themselves. Mm.
Per the translator, pig leather is distinguished by pores found in tiny groups of three forming triangles and is common on the inner surface of shoes manufactured in the US. One should discard such shoes which affect the foot with filth whenever wet.
And this is in the Shafi'i school. In other schools, the dog and the pig is not itself considered najis, right? As in the Shafi'i school. So the rulings may differ. But in the Shafi'i school, they can never be purified. Mm.
Purifying articles from filth. Whatever is affected by their saliva, per reliance of the translator, by
The
traces.
saliva of the pig and the dog, or anything that has become moist by their saliva. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the saliva itself. Anything that touches that, the dog touches it, that thing becomes najis as well.
Per
Mm.
reliance of the translator, by traces of moisture from dogs or swine, whether saliva, urine, anything moist from them, or any of their dry parts that have become moist, can only be purified by being washed 7 times, one of which must be with earth. Per the translator,
Pure earth, pure earth. So the earth itself cannot be najis. It has to be pure earth, right? Mm.
meaning water made murky by earth, though another fallible Shafi'i position holds that any cleansing agent, such as soap, may take the place of earth. Per reliance of the
And
translator,
here, all of these things are opinions. The reliable opinion in the school is to use pure earth. So I would advise to stick to the reliable opinion. Even when other opinions are given, get in the habit when there is uh, no necessity to take dispensations or weaker opinions, don't take them. Make that your habit because this is your religion. A lot of times, you'll learn in fiqh that the rule is not always the only saying in the school or between the schools. Highlight this, please put it up. Oftentimes, when you're studying fiqh, let's say this. The dominant opinion is not always the only opinion in a given school. Put it that way. The dominant opinion is not the only opinion in a given school or between the schools. Can we put that up? This is a very important lesson. I wish we would have learned that when we were younger. No one told us that. They just give us opinions and we go crazy. So let's put that up. The dominant opinion is not always the only opinion in a given school or between the schools. Let's copy that, right? Because I'm getting ready to tell you something. So everyone put that up. Inshallah. Oh man. Let's pause there. I'm going to cover this point. Where were you at?
2.5, the
Johnson,
last
the dog
sentence.
and the pig, right?
The water made murky by earth, though another
Yes.
followable Shafi position holds that any cleansing agent.
What page is it?
Page 16, 2.5, first paragraph, last sentence.
Let's start at 2.5 tomorrow, because I want to explain this point. So this is a little important. Just it'll help us religiously. All of what I'm getting ready to explain to you going to help you across the board, right? Because we've made this mistake, and I don't want us to fall into it in the future. So I'm just going to take about 15 minutes. I'm finished the actual class. This is an extra point related to the class, but the class itself is done. But this point is very important. It may take me a few minutes to explain it. So the point we're making here is that the dominant opinion, which we call the relied upon opinion, al-mu'tamad fil madhab, right? Which is, when I say opinion, I mean the scholarly legal opinion of the mujtahid scholar. So when I say opinion, don't think it like when we say opinion, I think, you think, he thinks. No, that's not what I mean. When I say an opinion, that is the expert legal scholarly deduction from the primary sources by a mujtahid scholar. That's what I mean. We already discussed the mujtahidun. So the layman has no discussion, no entry into this discussion. We're not talking about common people. We're not talking about the sheikh who's not a mujtahid. They don't have any discussion, any consideration in this discussion. When we're talking about the opinion here, we're talking about the opinion of the mujtahid scholars in cases of legal rulings, right? So you may have in a school in one madhab, within one madhab, the relied upon opinion in the madhab, the relied upon position that we must follow. In the Shafi'i school, for instance, the dominant opinion is the opinion of Imam al-Nawawi, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, which he mentioned in his books, right? So there may be other legal opinions by other scholars within the school that is different from the opinion of Imam al-Nawawi up to his time. We're not talking about after his time with cases he didn't mention. We're talking about up to his time, right? Which is most of the sacred law, right? In most cases. However, within the school, there may be other opinions. So we follow that dominant opinion. But that doesn't mean when we say, so we may not say the dominant opinion. We'll just use that as the opinion of the school, right? So when we just say, this is the madhab of a Shafi'i, we're talking about the dominant opinion in the school. However, there are other cases, other rulings about that issue within the school that is not the dominant opinion. For our purposes, we always follow the relied upon dominant opinion, except when there is a necessity to follow another opinion, right? That is valid within the school. There is a real need, a pressing need for that. We don't have to go into the needs. So that's one aspect. So whenever you have a ruling, right, and there are various opinions, our focus is to follow the relied upon opinion, right? That's within one school. That same thing is even more vast, the same point, when you're talking about other schools compared to the given school you're following. So there's opinions in the Shafi'i school that are different from the legal opinion, even the relied upon opinion in the Hanafi or Maliki or Hanbali school, right? Sometimes it can be more strict, sometimes it can be more lenient, but the opinions will differ. And when I say that, the expert legal opinions we're talking about. That's the nature of al-ijtihad, right? So whenever you're within one school, you always follow the relied upon opinion in that school. In that particular school, from the scholars, mujtahidun of that school, not the mujtahids from another school talking about that school. So for instance, I don't take the judgment of the Shafi'i school from a Hanafi. Even if he's right, he's not a source from which to know the reliable opinion of the Shafi'i school. Likewise, you don't take the opinion of a Shafi'i in the Maliki school or any other school, or the Hanafi school for that matter. Is these points clear so far? The point, do y'all understand the point, or is not clear? So from this, we also understand that when we want to follow a particular school, we must follow that school from the relied upon books in that school and the judgments of the relied upon scholars of that school. That's our objective all the time. With that in mind, there's going to be cases where there's going to be various opinions mentioned about some legal rulings. Always try to find what is the dominant legal opinion in this issue according to the school itself, and distinguish that between a opinion that may be legally valid, but is not the dominant opinion in the school. So we don't say that the opinion of that mujtahid scholar is invalid. We say it's not the position of the school. And therefore, we normally would not take by it. However, there may be circumstances that exist where such opinion one may take by. So that's why they're there. They are known legal opinions. What does this whole lesson teach us? Because we learn a matter, it does not mean that that is the absolute, unequivocal rule in the religion. Unless we know for sure that that religious ruling is a ruling of scholarly consensus between all of the schools. Other than that, we should realize that this is the position of the Shafi'is, for instance. We don't say this is the rule for everyone in Islam. We say this is the ruling according to the Shafi'i school, or the Hanafi school, or the Maliki school, or the Hanbali school. Because if we don't understand this, what happens is a lot of times is a person will just say, this is the rule, as if there is no other legal opinion or qualified legal opinion in that case, which is false. That's the point. So don't become a watcher over the people based on one legal perspective of religious rulings. Does that make sense? Do not become a watcher over the people based on one legal perspective of religious rulings. Just make sure that the rulings that one is following is valid and the relied upon opinion in the school. That's what you want to try to follow. It is a valid opinion, number one, and it is the dominant opinion in a particular school. Is this clear? I won't say narrow-minded, because a person may just not know and don't know al-fiqh, don't know how fiqh work, don't know about scholarship, don't know about the levels of ijtihad within the school, outside of school. So they don't have all that, just a common person. So a lot of times people teach us the religion as if this is the only way. And I think about that all the time, right? That has happened in our community so much. The person learned one way to do a thing and act like that's the only way and oppress everyone else. And a lot of times, totally wrong in the issue. Not that they're wrong that this is the way in a particular methodology, but that methodology is binding on everyone. And it's not a case of scholarly consensus. I'll give you one. If we knew this, we would never stress out. If we understood this. For instance, you have this issue that we have in America in some places. I was thinking about this heavily. It's probably going to get me in trouble, but I say it anyway. Doesn't matter. I'm like fed up with people threatening us, like to my ears with it, with their false authority. that has no authority in the religion whatsoever, right? So if I, in some circles, I might get canceled, but I'm going for it. Doesn't matter to me. The issue of Al-Qibla, whether it's southeast or northeast, right? The way that issue has been presented to us is either or, and that's not reality, right? Why do I say it's not reality? Because not every school has the exact same rules when it comes to Al-Qibla. And no particular school is binding on any common person, right? So in their case, they could follow the Maliki school, they could follow the Hanafi school, they could follow the Shafi'i school, they could follow the Hanbali school. And there is a rule among all mujtahid scholars that the common person does not have a specific madhab, right? That such a person follows the legal opinion of the scholar that they trust and is available to them. Because as a common person, right, they don't have the tools. But the way it's presented to common people, as if this is the only opinion, and if you don't follow this opinion, your prayer is invalid, which is insanity in religious rules. It's insanity if you understood this judgment that this point that I made, but they don't tell us that. Someone just comes and tells you this is the way it is. It's not the way it is. I don't have to follow that at all, period. Right? I don't have to follow that at all. And it's legally valid according to reliable positions in schools, let alone within one school that's not their position, right? But they don't tell us this. They just give us a party line, and that's it. And what it really says, follow me. As if you're not even qualified to be followed. Legally, you're not a jurist. You're not a mujtahid. So your opinion really don't even matter. And with that type of attitude, you shouldn't be followed. Because it's the danger that we face. It leads to fanaticism. It leads to putting people in hardship that they shouldn't be in, religiously. And one of the things that I learned from my teachers and from reading the books of our scholars, that's just not how they work. They're not rigid. They're not rigid. They're not rigid like that. Because they didn't make religion so difficult that it's almost impossible to practice. But if you don't notice, what it leads to, I said I was going to be 15 minutes. Let me get ready to stop. What it leads to is religiously controlling you from human side, not from the religion. So I'm giving you half rulings so that I can control you. And this is dangerous. So I'm giving you that. But now there's going to be a level of learning. But that's a rule you should keep in mind, right? The sacred law is vast, and it has many, many, many ways to approach it, not just one way. So there are valid ways and there are invalid ways, but there are valid ways to do things. It's not always strict and tight and no room for flexibility. That's not our sacred law. Is this point clear? We clear on this, and I'll stop there. Good, mashallah. I'm glad you understood. All right, we'll stop there, inshallah. Barakallahu bikum. Inshallah, uh, we'll continue tomorrow. Tonight, Sheikh Walid Al-Rifai continues with his Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, his lessons on the stories of the prophets. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Barakallahu bikum. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.